Today I'm going to be building another Anakin Episode 3 lightsaber. I've actually made a couple videos on this exact same lightsaber build setup before, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to do something a bit different. For the first thing, I decided to prepare all the wires for each of the parts beforehand. As you can see, I've laid them all out next to the part they're going to be used for. I have the correct number of wires, the correct colors of wires, I've cut each of them to the size they're going to need to be, and I've already stripped and pre-soldered the ends. Now what I'm going to do, instead of setting each of these up one at a time, I'm going to try doing them all at once. Okay, I have now attached all of the wires to all of the parts. So we've got the 28mm base speaker, the OLED display, the two battery tabs, the positive and negative, the Bluetooth module, and then over here we have the two tactile switches, one for the activation, one for the auxiliary, and then this is the NeoPixel connector. Now the next thing I'm going to do is put it all into the chassis I designed. I've now put pretty much everything into the chassis, and I'm just waiting for some E6000 to cure to hold things in place. The only things I haven't added yet are the buttons and the CFX soundboard. So while we wait, there's something I need to do. So when I was sent this lightsaber to install, I discovered it was missing a screw to hold the control box in place. And since I don't have any screws that fit, I'm gonna have to take this one that I have and modify it to make it work. And while I was checking out the rest of the hilt, I found something else that was very weird and might affect the way I have to attach the control box. Underneath this clamp section, we can see the holes where the button plungers and the control box screw go. As you can see, it looks like someone tried to drill into the already existing screw hole. Luckily, it doesn't look like there was any real damage that was done. It still accepts screws, and I have one that fits. Now that I know what screw will work, I have to figure out how to get it to fit in the control box. And the only way I can think of is to sand it. In order to get that to happen, I decided to get myself one of these. This is a little adapter for my drill that can be adjusted to hold on to small parts. As you can see, after I put in the screw, all I have to do is twist and it locks the screw in place. My plan is to use my power drill to turn the screw while I sand down the edges until it's the right size to fit into the control box. First, I'm going to try using some good old sandpaper. Okay, that's not working very well, so why don't I give this metal file that I have a try? Maybe using metal to sand down metal will make it go faster. Okay, I've sanded it quite a lot. Let's see if it fits. And not quite. I guess I'll go ahead and keep sanding it. And there we go, that should be good. I just realized that I might want a smaller screw than the one I've been working on, just in case the longer one is actually too long when I finally get it to fit in the control box. So I guess it's back to sanding. Okay, that was a lot. You guys are lucky you didn't have to sit through the whole thing. But at least after all that work, I finally have a screw to hold this control box in place. So let's put it in and see if it works. And there we go, control box is secured. So I've gotten a couple questions on how to split one wire into two wires, specifically for a lightsaber build. What I like to do is start by stripping two wires and soldering them together like you see here. Once that's done, you just take those two wires and solder them to the single wire. And the last thing you'll want to do is add some heat shrink to the exposed joint you just made, so you can prevent it from accidentally touching things it shouldn't and causing problems. I tend to do this most often for attaching NeoPixel negatives to CFX soundboards. So when you see a single wire split into multiple wires on a wiring diagram, this is pretty much what they're asking for. Here's another example of when you might want to use this method, for connecting the two negative wires of the buttons. But that's pretty much all there is to it, so now I'm just going to finish installing this lightsaber's soundboard, and then I'll be back to show it off. And there we go, I now have all the parts of this lightsaber installed in the chassis. Here's a good look at the buttons that I set up, along with the NeoPixel connector at the top, and then of course we have the OLED display in the middle, followed by the battery tabs, and then we have the 28mm bass speaker at the bottom. And now after the installation of the soundboard, it's finally time to give this thing a test. Looks like the speaker and OLED display are working. Now I'll try cycling through the screensavers using the auxiliary button. That all looks good. How about we test force activation next? Awesome, that works. Now for gesture controls. Let's try that again. There we go. Now let's try turning it on with the activation button. And with that, it looks like everything works. Now there's only one more test left to go. Let's put this in the hilt and put in a blade. So there are two things that are being tested that determines whether this works or not. First is if the button plungers from the control box are actually hitting the buttons on the chassis. And second, of course, is if the blade lights up, which I guess also tests the blade detection feature. So it looks like the power button and the auxiliary button are working just fine. Now it's time for the most important test. Let's take out the blade plug, put in the blade, see if blade detection works, and then light up the lightsaber. Okay, that's not a good sign. We should have heard a blade detection sound by now. I'm pretty sure the blade's going in all the way, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on. Maybe I'll try replacing the NeoPixel pins with longer ones. We'll see if that works. Okay, so I just got done replacing the old NeoPixel pins with these new longer ones. So let's go ahead and put this back in the hilt, and if we're lucky, it'll actually work this time. Well, at least it still turns on. That means I didn't mess anything up when I replaced the pins. Alright, now it's time for the moment of truth. What the heck? That sounds terrible. Do you guys hear that? It's like crackly. Ah, geez, what the heck is it now? Sounds like the speaker's hitting the... Oh, I know what's wrong. I forgot to add my speaker booster. I made this specifically to be put between the speaker and the pommel of the hilt. That's why the pins weren't making connection before and why the speaker sounds terrible now. So once I put this into where it's actually supposed to be, all my problems should be solved. Here we go, I think I finally got it now. All of our problems were definitely caused by the missing booster ring. So with that now glued to the pommel, and the NeoPixel connector pins are short again, it's time to give this thing a third, and hopefully final, try. So far so good, but now it's time for the real test. Let's put in the blade. Oh, thank goodness, that sounds perfect. Now there's only one more thing left to worry about. Will the blade light up? Let's give it a shot. Yes, it worked. Alright, so it looks like this project is finally completed. Thank you to all of you who watched.